Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Titan Talk. My name is Lenny Benabez. I am the Artistic Director of Titan Theater Company. Thank you all for watching our reading of Henry V. Today we are not going to talk too much about the play. We're going to talk about some other issues that are currently facing our country. We have a very special guest, resident company member, Sequoia. How are you today, Sequoia?
Hi, Lenny. I'm good, considering.
Yeah, all things considering. Sequoia, I'm going to plug something really quick before we get started, just in case, because we're going to be talking about some serious topics, and I want to make sure that I don't cut the conversation short and miss plugging this. I'm going to put the graphic back up for a second. This week, we've been asking for donations to pay our artists and things like that. But this week, Titan Theater Company through Titan Shakespeare Festival, which is our online Shakespeare festival, will be using 100% of the funds that we do raise this week to support these organizations you see here: Black Visions Collective, Minnesota Freedom Fund, Reclaim the Block, Campaign Zero, and the Unicorn Riot. If you want to donate through Titan, we will take all those funds and distribute them evenly between these organizations. Or you can go right to them and donate to them directly. I encourage you to do that. Or you can donate to us and we can do the legwork for you. So Sequoia, thank you for joining me today. We've known each other for about, what, a year now?
A year, maybe two.
It feels like two, but I think it's only been a year, because what was your first show with us?
You're right. My first show was Hamlet.
Which would have that would have closed April. So a little bit over a year, right?
Over a year.
Yeah, it feels like a lot longer than that, doesn't it?
We've done so many shows together, though.
We have in a short period of time. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you've done with Titan?
Yeah, so my first show with Titan was Hamlet, which Lenny directed.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
I'm so sorry.
And then we went into the school tour of Love's Labor's Lost, which you also directed.
Yeah,
and
as well.
Tartuffe. And my last show I did with Titan, African Company Presents Richard III.
Yeah, you had a busy season this last season.
Yeah.
We've kept you occupied. And you are now a newly minted resident company member, which makes me very happy when you said yes to that. I think you heard a collective, popping, yelling sound when you said yes. So we're very happy to have you as part of the resident company. So where are you from originally? How about we start with a little bit about you?
Yeah, I am born and raised in Alabama. I'm a Southern girl. Mm-hmm. I am born and raised here. I went to college here, got my training here in Alabama, but I was so happy to leave to go to New York City. New York is home.
You say here, so you are currently in Alabama.
In Alabama.
Yeah, yes. So you left New York to go home for a while, right?
Mm-hmm. Because of COVID, I ended up going home to Alabama.
Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about how hot it is. How hot is it today in Alabama?
It's in the 80s. But the thing is, think about, in subways of New York, when you're just waiting on the platform, there's no air, and you're just hot. That's Alabama all day.
Alabama's like a New York subway, is what you're saying. Okay. And what school did you go to, Sequoia?
I went to Troy University in Troy, Alabama.
Nice. Yeah. And you got a degree in?
So my degree is a little funny. I got a degree in communication with a theater emphasis and education. So it's a theater and education emphasis, and I got it in English.
Excellent. Yeah, they like to pair those. They like to pair those kinds of things together.
There was no official BA or BFA theater program.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. They might not have a theater program, but they produced a darn fine actor. So we're very lucky to have you. And you played Mountjoy last night in Henry V as well. And that's still running on Broadway On Demand. Just got done with the student matinee. So why did you move to New York? Why did you pick New York as the epicenter of where Sequoia would take over the world?
Yes, I speak that into existence. I take that in agreement. So I was considering LA. My mom and I were actually, when I was in high school, we would go to Los Angeles. I was working with a coach out there. I was thinking about getting into the commercial world. But when it came down to my senior year and I discovered my love for Shakespeare, I knew New York was the place for me. And I mean, it was a tough decision because I had family in LA as well. It would have been so much easier just to go to LA. But I knew I wanted to do theater, specifically classical theater, which would have served me better in New York. So I graduated in May, moved to New York in September.
Wow, that's a quick turnaround. A lot of people coming out of undergrad, in particular ones that are going to smaller schools like Troy, usually take a little bit more time to make that leap. So that was quick for you. That was really quick.
I was determined to get out because just to be honest, my undergrad experience wasn't great. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. I was wanting more, and they just weren't able to give me what I wanted. So I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get to New York.
You gotta get out of there. Yeah. And so when you got here, when you came and auditioned, we did an open call, and that's where we met you. How long had you been in New York before we met you?
Oh, it had been years. But actually, by that time I auditioned for you guys, I started working regionally. So I had just got back from Cincinnati, Ohio, Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park. And before that, I was with Main Stage Shakespeare in Kennebunkport, Maine. So I had been in New York for maybe 3 or 4 years at that point.
Great. And that's right. You had just come back from your time at Cincy Playhouse. Great theater, which a theater I adore. So when you moved from, and this is what you and I discussed and what the topic of today's conversation is. When you came, what was it like coming from Alabama to the big city?
A definite culture shock in so many ways. Classism was the biggest shock because I deal with racism obviously here in Alabama because it's just black and white. Like I had a lot of learning to do when I moved to New York because I had never really had a conversation with a Dominican person or a Puerto Rican person. Because that population isn't really relevant here in Alabama. And I had to educate myself in that. And the classism was what really got to me in New York because it's so obvious. You can have the projects on one street and literally the next street, there are like $1 million homes, but they're two different worlds that are like literally streets apart from each other. And that really got to me because I just couldn't understand how it's so obvious and no one's doing anything about it. Going from the Upper East Side to East Harlem, how the streets on the Upper East Side are so clean, but literally for some reason, once you hit like this certain like threshold, the sidewalks become so dirty and messy in East Harlem. So are like the custodial staff like just stopping at a certain point? That was the main thing that got to me. And also how I am seen as far as in my class in New York. Like I'm a working artist, but when I walk into a room, there's this sense of if you're not wearing like Chanel bags or designer clothes, like you're a part of like not the elite. And it's like, no. Check my bank account. And so then that's when I started going into this phase of like, I feel like I have to dress a certain way now to show that I am worthy of your attention.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, because we talk about gentrification a lot and how here in New York, like you said, within a block, it's almost like services stop. Now, can you tell us a little bit, so is Alabama still segregated and there's areas? And so when you came here, that was the thing that made it that it's so close here and it's so spread out in Alabama? That's my question for you.
Where I live in Alabama, we're together. We're together, but we're still apart. Like in New York, there's this complete separation, it seems like this diverse city, but there's still this obvious separation. For me, that's how I felt. But in Alabama, like one of my neighbors is white, as far as my family's home. One of them is white, the next door is black, across the street's black, and the rest of the street is white. But like we still communicate with each other. I feel like in New York, there was this sense of the people, they can be one street away from each other, but they have two separate lives. in Alabama, at least, we might be a street away from each other, but we still interact with each other. And that might just be Southern hospitality of going in the grocery store and you say hello to everyone. It doesn't really matter. You just at least greet. But in it just felt like this big divide.
Yeah, and so that defines the way you're using the word classism, which is definitely there's this divide of not only economically but racially, maybe, as we see each other that way. So I get that, which is a great segue into my follow-up.
Can I say this? I think what it is,
please.
I think because racism is definitely here in Alabama, it's hidden a lot better.
Yeah.
In New York, it's like, if I don't want to talk to you, I'm not going to talk to you. But at least in Alabama, there's like this Southern like niceness behind it. My mom calls it nice nasty. It's like a little hello, but they don't really mess with you. That's what I think it is. So in Alabama, in the South in general.
That's interesting. And actually, I'm glad that you did interrupt me from interrupting you, because that actually even feeds better into my follow-up, which is we kind of blanket the South as racist, as there's racism is a problem that still exists in the South, but we know that it's alive and well up here in New York and in the northern states completely. It's not like once you cross over that it goes away. Can you describe the difference of how that has affected you, Alabama versus how it exposes itself? I know you touched on it a little bit, but if you can go in a little bit more, like microaggressions and things like that.
Yeah, I am. I'm trying to see how I can say this for myself. I always knew I was a Black girl. Even amongst growing up, I was the only Black cheerleader for a while at my high school, the only Black girl in my drama club in high school. Even when I got to college, it was myself and another Black girl. It was always me or just me. Mm-hmm. When I got to New York, there seemed to have been this awakening in my Blackness, in the sense of, oh, they see you as a Black woman. They see you as this stereotype. Mm-hmm. And you can either go against that stereotype or you can feed into it. And I hate to say that now in New York, like, I dress a certain way. You're not going to see me like out and about in leggings and a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. Like, because I just feel like I would be treated differently. Even on the train, I was on the, the Select bus where you can get your Metro card outside, mm-hmm. and they give you a little ticket. Uh-huh. I was on that, and I was actually coming from Astoria going to Harlem, and it was in the middle of the day. It was myself, an Asian woman, a white woman. Like, the bus was basically empty, and the bus stopped at the stop, and the little Metro police got on, and he passed by every single person and came straight to me to ask me for my ticket. And that was when I first basically moved to New York, and that was like you didn't stop the Asian woman or the white woman to check for their tickets. You came straight for me. And there was just a sense of like, why? And I called my mom, and she was like, that's just the way it is. Mm. And I thought, well, maybe if I'm dressed up, like if I dress a certain way, like if I look presentable, if I look like I have money, or I am not this stereotype of what they think, they won't treat me this way. And that's obviously not the case, but it's just this thing of, we have to get to a place where we're not stereotyping people. Mm-hmm. Like our idea of Blackness. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that you won't go out in leggings and a t-shirt, but my wife is a yoga instructor, and and Laura well, and mm-hmm. we're all friends, and she goes out in that every day because of her job, and doesn't think twice about that. Would never think twice about what anybody thought about her wearing yoga clothes. So
my teaching artist friends, I'm a teaching artist as well, and mm-hmm. they're dressed down. We're rolling around with kids. I'm mm-hmm. coming in dressed up as if I'm going into like a corporate job for the most part. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you always look so nice. You always look so good. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. But deep down, it's like, no, because I know, first of all, I know the students I cater to. I teach very wealthy white children. Mm-hmm. And I'm going into the penthouses. I'm going into the private schools that are $80,000 a year. The doormen see me every single week but yet there's this sense of you have to check for my badge. It's like, you know me. So yeah, I definitely make sure I'm dressed to a way where they can't say you look like, or I thought you would be this, or you could possibly be this.
Mm-hmm. So let's now transfer that in lieu of Griffin Matthews' posts on social media and Cody Richard as well. Let's talk about, in the theater, we think of ourselves as so liberal and so understanding. But we know that racism is a problem in the theater. What do you feel about that? Where do your thoughts and opinions come in on that, and your experiences as well?
I'm trying to find the right word to say it, but I can only think of liberal racism. That's the only thing I can think of. And I think that's the most dangerous. Yeah. Like Amy Cooper, for example, this woman on paper, you would think that she is so supportive of equal rights. She's a feminist. She's all about this and that on paper. But I think that's the most dangerous. These people who don't have a true revelation of what equality actually is. It's either a trend for them, a fad, or they think that they're doing what's right, but it's actually they don't have the true revelation of it. And so in theater, it's most disgusting when you have these casting directors, these artistic directors who say they want to be diverse and they want to elevate Black voices or people of color voices, but it's not reflected in their staff. It's not reflected in their board. It's not reflected in who in their donors. I think it's disgusting to have to know, and this still the same thing applies to theater, but even I'm actively involved in my church to find out that a pastor who I know, and not personally, but I know of, likes white supremacist posts on Instagram. I have a problem with that. But you can't be a pastor to a flock that looks very diverse and say you're truly their pastor, because you're not if you're liking these white supremacist quotes and pictures on Instagram. The same thing applies to artistic directors. You can't try to put Black voices on your stage if you are secretly in these like white supremacist groups, or you're taking money from well-known white supremacists or people who don't really align with equality. And the problem with the liberal racism is they want to say they're against racism, but they don't want to be anti-racism. And that's the biggest problem. It's going to take these artistic directors, these casting directors to say, you know what, I'm actually going to stand against this. I'm not just going to be silent on it anymore. And I feel like I'm like ranting now because I get really passionate about
You're not ranting, Sequoia. Keep ranting. And if this is ranting, keep going, please.
We have to get to a point where we're no longer just saying, oh, racism is bad. We need to get to a point where we say, you know what, I'm going to be anti-racism. I am going to call it out. And it's going to take some courage. Like what you're doing right now is very courageous, because this could be potentially a way for some people might not like this conversation, especially with the Titan name on it. And I say, if they don't like it, forget them, because I would hope that you and Titan wouldn't want someone who doesn't align with actual equality to invest in this company, And some people I think are just afraid. I had a science teacher message me on Facebook and say that some people, white people, just don't know what to say. And I'm like, say something. I see you, I value you, I love you, but your silence, you can say you're not racist, but if you are silent, you are a part of the problem. And the same thing applies to theaters. These theaters out here posting, so many theaters are posting, we condemn racism. We see you, we value you, but I want you to put your money where your mouth is. I want you to put some actions toward what you're saying. Are you going to bring people of color into these boardrooms? Are you going to bring people of color as far as like producing these works? Because we've gotten to a phase where we see color on Broadway stages. We see it on stage now. We've gotten to that point. Hamilton changed the game. But the problem is still in these boardrooms. It's still in these rooms where the decisions are being made. which is why we have so many problems with like H&M and all of these big brands. They're so off the money when it comes to making statements because they don't have a voice in the room. So what I want theater and Broadway and regional theaters to do is put their money where their mouth is. A post isn't going to work anymore. I want you to actually start advocating and saying, you know what, we're done with this racism. We're going to push back against it.
Absolutely.
That was a lot.
It was fabulous, Sequoia. Thank you. Thank you. So there's something you said in there, and it piggybacks into something you said before. Is you love Shakespeare, and we've had this conversation numerous times about your love for classical theater. And as a classical theater artistic director, and having said what you just said, you know, diversity for me is in casting. That's the quickest way to do it, is saying, look, we're going to do casting. So my question to you is, how can classical companies, and you as a Black actress, who are doing these plays, you love these plays written by white men 400 to 2,500 years ago, if you go at the Greeks all the way up to Shakespeare and here, into what we refer to as the American classics, which truly only includes August Wilson as a playwright of color in the American classic section. But let's stick with Shakespeare and Moliere and things like that you've been doing with us. I know you love it. Where are the hurdles in it? And what can I and other artistic directors who are producing these plays, it's our mission to keep these plays alive. Other than casting, are there other solutions to that? No, I just threw a lot at you. So pick it apart, and if you need me to throw another section in, I will.
Okay. So I didn't come into classical theater as like I read it and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I came into classical theater basically as an act of rebellion in college.
Oh, wow.
Because I kept feeling like I was being boxed in.
Mm-hmm.
In acting class, we would get assigned our monologues in our acting 1 class.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was getting these diverse playwrights, these diverse monologues. And I was always given a Black playwright, but I was always given August Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 1 Lynn Nottage monologue. And it was fun. It was great to do. Mm-hmm. But I was looking like, how come she got Shakespeare and then like 1 week, and then she gets like Crimes of the Heart the next week, and then you do Shape of Things the next, like they got such like a big diverse like training in the sense in the acting 1 class. And I was like, no. And so the next year, went for general auditions, I was like, I'm going to do a classical monologue. I don't know why I chose classical in the sense of Shakespeare. I don't know why I decided a Shakespeare monologue, but I said I'm going to do a Shakespeare monologue. And I did Cleopatra from Antony and Cleopatra. And they were like, whoa, that was good.
Yeah. Well, that's what I did when you walked in the room too. I went, oh. So, but go ahead, keep going.
No, I did it because I wanted to show them. And I did the speech where she, at the very end, where she's like, should they tie me up and should they do this and that to me? And she's like, no, like basically she's saying like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die my own way. And she does. She kills herself with the snakes. And it was my way of saying, if I'm going to be here, because I had transferred to Troy and I couldn't transfer again.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be stuck here, I'm going to do the work that I want to do. Because clearly you see me as someone who can only do August Wilson and Lynn Nottage and like Lorraine Hansberry. And don't get me wrong, these are playwrights who I absolutely love and admire, but I wanted more. As a student, I wanted more because I'm like, I'm going to be doing this professionally. And again, they probably just didn't know because it's not like a program where, you know, they probably never worked professionally, just being honest. Yeah. It was like we graduate, we got our MFA in acting from the middle of nowhere, Alabama, you know? So they just didn't know. But so going back to professional work, it was nice to know that I could be a fairy. I could be Titania. in A Midsummer Night's Dream and not be, she's a black fairy. It's like, she's, you know, the world is so, like, Shakespeare is so old and the world is so magical, like using Midsummer as an example, that no one's really focused on race. So it was a way for me to just be free. I didn't have to worry about like being typecast or being black enough. I have a friend who auditioned for Seven Guitars once, and the director was black, but the casting director was white, and he said something along the lines of like, "Can you make it more urban in the sense?" And she was like, just the way it was like, there's this sense of like, are you black enough to do the black works? And I just really wanted to just let the work speak for itself, and I found that in classical theater. For me, that's how I came to classical theater, because I was able to just it was just about acting. It wasn't about my race. When I did my first like regional gig was A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Helena, and my Demetrius was white. And I don't know how, but the conversation came up with a black woman chasing after this white man and what that looks like. And that's when I was like, okay, race does, when we're as an audience, when we're viewing something and you're viewing this black woman literally like pouring her heart out to this white man who doesn't want her. And when I thought about that, we were in rehearsal once, and I just started crying because it was the sense of, oh, snap. Like, I love someone who doesn't love me, but on top of that, he's this white man who doesn't love me. And it also was this point of, we need to see that though. Because like love has no color, like love has like no race. So that's what made it beautiful to me. I think about Lady Macbeth, and when she talks about in that monologue how the baby and she's like having a black woman. I was in a production of it once, and it was the Macbeths were black, and Femi, she's great. She was doing the monologue and just watching her, and she's very open on her blog about her miscarriage and things like that. There was just this sense of like power in seeing a black woman say these words that mostly white women have done for all these years. So I had to realize that my color does change the game. It doesn't change it. It amplifies it in another way. The same way if an Asian woman would do that same role, it would change the dynamic in another way. Which is why, like, if I did, is my dream to one day do A Streetcar Named Desire and be black.
Oh, wait, I'm writing it down.
Yes, like literally, it is my dream. But it's a conversation to be had about Black people and mental health. So if we're seeing, like they did it on Broadway a few years ago with Blair Underwood and Nicole Lowry Parker, and the theater was filled with all these Black people, seeing this woman have a mental breakdown, but that is something, mental health is what we really don't talk about it in the Black community. So using theater as a way to bring these subjects up that we just don't talk about. Because going back to Shakespeare, I found that it was an act of rebellion, and I could just let the work live for itself, not my race be the first thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we use Shakespeare with all this creative license. We do it when we do a minimalistic production. We go, here, we're in the Forest of Arden, and we believe it. So why can't we believe that these people can be people of any color? Which is great, which is why I think what's so great about Shakespeare and classical text is that we can do that. And we can do that in any way, though. You just talked about Streetcar. You can do it with Streetcar. I've seen all African-American productions of Glass Menagerie. They're fabulous. Like theater has no bounds.
But the problem is, Lenny, is when we, like you and I know this, but when we do that, it gets pushed back. You get this, well, why can't we do August Wilson? Why can't we do Lynn Donald? It's just like, no, because it wasn't written for you. And the reason why, and we can't say that Streetcar or Shakespeare wasn't written for us, because those stories are universal stories.
Exactly.
Fences isn't a universal story. Fences is the Black experience. That is why you cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, you and I know this, but you have the idiots of the world who, the same people who are saying all lives matter, who don't understand that like certain things are a part of the Black experience, just like certain things are a part of the Asian American experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to get to a place where we realize that like the line, where we're crossing the line,
Mm-hmm.
being exclusive and having equality for everyone, but also understanding that some things you just don't touch.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare isn't one of them.
And Shakespeare is not one of them. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. We're at time, but we're going to keep going. Are you okay? You got a couple more minutes to chat? Because there's two more questions that I think are really important.
All right.
What can companies do right now? I want you can talk to me as your artistic director. You can talk to the general populace. When we hit stop on this interview, other than what we're doing right now, which is raising money, what do you want to see companies? What do you want to see me? What do you want to see people do to address racism in the theater community?
Completely like unfiltered.
Mm-hmm.
What speaking for me, I would like for you to pick up a book. I say you, but
no.
Directors.
No, I do. I made a massive purchase of books. I'm listening and learning. That's that's why we're having this conversation. Sequoia, yeah, you can say you to me. I fall into the you category. Go ahead.
Pick up a book. Google. There are so many resources now more than ever out there. And so a lot of the things that I'm expecting can't be done in public, in the front lines. It has to be done in private because this is a heart issue. It really is. It's like a how you see people issue. It has to be done in those small meetings with your board and with your producers and with your company members, like the people. It has to be done in those small places. And that when you do it, like what's done in private will come to light. So when you're doing those things in private, as far as like reading those books, having those meetings, learning, that's going to be projected in the public as far as how you start casting and how you start advertising your work, how you choose your seasons and things like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it starts here, mm-hmm. and then it goes out.
It's amazing how so much starts here. You got to fix here.
Yep.
Or else it's all optical. It's all Facebook likes and shares and things like that, which we have to do, right now to make sure that we're amplifying voices or standing up or whatever. But none of that makes much of a difference if this isn't changed, I feel.
Yeah.
So now here's a bigger question, because we talk about theater having the ability to change the broad scope of the landscape. Like protesting almost, like protesting, mm-hmm. Nothing has come. No advancements in our culture have ever come without protest. Mm-hmm. So what can theater companies, even small but mighty ones like Titan, what can we do now to help fight systematic racism in the country? Mm-hmm. That's a big picture.
Yeah, but it's possible in the sense of it's step by step. You guys already do this, like your student matinees, because theater is so inaccessible. Broadway is not accessible to me, and I'm an actor, really. Like, it's not really accessible to me, mm-hmm. which is horrifying. But you guys already do student matinees to bring in theater for people who probably wouldn't even experience it. Mm-hmm. So if companies aren't doing that, they should start. They should start by having classes where, and I get like you have to keep these companies have to keep their lights on too, but if we're able to get like the education, that changes things, Mm-hmm. If we're able to bring in these shows that are literally like life-changing in a sense, like I'm not just saying that because like, I'm a part of Titan, but Hamlet. That production of Hamlet where those students came in and they were like, I'd never seen a Shakespeare show before. And they literally was like fawning over Laura's performance and how amazing it was. And they were like, this is my first play. And like, they never would have gotten that unless Titan would have done it. Mm-hmm. And they got quality theater.
Yeah.
The only way we can start to like eradicate like this systematic racism if these companies start saying, you know what, we're gonna go where no one else is going. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be the ones to start. And I know that Titan's on their way. When COVID happened, you guys were the first to say, you know what, we're gonna pause on Romeo and Juliet for a second. And then that's when the other companies started. But it's gonna take, whether you're a big company or a small company, to say, hey, we're gonna go where no one else is gonna go because we know we need to. We know this is the right thing to do. Forget money, and it's gonna be, you gotta be bold to do that. And some people aren't bold or courageous enough to do that. That you gotta.
I'm gonna break protocol here for a second and step out of frame because I can't see that far. As you can tell, I wear glasses. We have a live feed going on over here, and I want to make sure that there's any questions that are coming in that feed, that we get them, okay? So It might just be people, I see some clapping hands and things like that. It might just be people saying, Sequoia, you're the greatest. Can't wait to see your next performance. But let me step out really quick, and sorry everybody watching, this isn't the way live TV is supposed to go, but I have bad eyes, and you're gonna have to deal with it. I'll be right back.
Yes, live TV. I don't know, should I do a little ditty or something? This is hilarious.
Are you vamping? Are you vamping for me?
This little vamp.
You're vamping. So there were questions. They were very great compliments about you, and I humbly, and about Titan, which I humbly pass on to you for your willingness to have this discussion with me. You know I adore you. And I love you very much. And I cannot thank you enough for your honesty, for your time, for your bravery and courage and smarts and savvy. And, as you said before we went live, your entrance as Montjoy when your friend said, oh, here comes the sass. It's something I adore about you. So thank you. That's all I have. I could ramble, and I'm not going to. I don't need to. You've said everything we need to have said. I'm going to put the graphic up one more time as we're closing this out. Again, these are the companies that we will be giving 100% of our funds to. Great organizations, look them up. We haven't got to updating the website yet. This image is up on the website, but we're going to make sure there's links to all of them as well. And feel free to bypass us and go right to them too. All we're here to do is facilitate these raising of funds. If you want us to do the divvying up of it, great. If not, do that yourself. We by no means need to be the medium in which you do that. All right, Sequoia, I'm gonna let you go. We're gonna head out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lenny. Truly, you, and I'm not just saying this because I'm with Titan, but you truly are on the right path. And it's gonna take people like you because Black people have been saying this for the longest, but now it's time for you and people like you, our white allies, to start leading the charge for us. Because honestly, we're tired.
Yep.
And we need you and people like you along with us.
Well,
so thank you.
I will continue to learn and grow and push as hard as I can. I am at your side when you need it. I am behind you when you need it, and I am in front of you if you want it. So with that, bye everybody at home. Bye to Sequoia. Thank you. And we'll have, this is our last thing with Broadway On Demand for a while. So everybody, thank you for tuning into all the shows. They're up and running still. Titan Shakespeare Festival is up and running. You can see Sequoia in that. You can see more of Sequoia all over our website. And hopefully really, really soon, Sequoia, see you in person on stage.
Same here.
All right. Have a great day. Have a great day, everybody at home, and we will see you